All right, guys, welcome back to what we're going to call the AJ and Valentin show now. I think that's pretty much the name we've decided to call this one. So welcome back, and I'd like to say again thank you for all the comments that we've received in terms of the podcast itself, and the quality of the questions that we're receiving also has been sort of awesome. So thank you very much for that, guys, and I can confirm that I think this episode should be of an increased quality with Valentin's audio being upgraded. So we should be able to hear Valentin a little bit better this time. So first things first, a little bit of a wrap up on our week. So Valentin, how has the past week been for you? What's been going on in the gym? Have you got anything exciting to talk about in terms of your week?
Yeah, as far as training goes, I'm entering my second to last week for this program, and have 1 week left next week, and then I'm gonna take 4 days off. Like I think I mentioned it last episode.
You did, yeah.
But I'm actually really looking forward to switching up programs. I mean, some of the exercises, and we will later get to exercise selection, some of the exercises will stay in there because I'm still progressing these lifts.
Of course.
But I'm just gonna be happy about a fresh new start. You know about that. I mean, just have a bit of a different layout, a bit of a different approach with some of the rep ranges, and that will just be awesome. I can't wait for that.
Great.
And it was Tuesday. On Tuesday, I had a posing session with Emma Hindman.
Oh, no way. Was that online? That's wicked.
It was online via Skype, and I have to say it was one of the best coaching experiences I've made in the last few years, because
wow. Okay, cool.
I was amazed at what I was able to learn within an hour.
Yeah.
And basically only went over the relaxed poses for 1 hour.
Wow.
And let me do the front relax for like 30 minutes, and I was just dying, man, because it was, once you are used to a particular pose and the way you do it, it's very difficult to get rid of those ingrained habits.
Yeah.
And that's going to take some time and a lot of practice. But the fact that we only did the 4 relaxed poses in one session, in 1 hour, just tells me the level of detail she is paying attention to is very high, and I absolutely love that. So that got me really excited this week. So I'm practicing posing even in my off season now daily, because I think now it's that important for me. So I think I want to lift it up to of nutrition and training. I think posing is eye to eye with those two, and yeah, I can't wait to move forward and do more sessions with her. But yeah, as far as that goes, I mean, training is going well. Have really accumulated a lot of fatigue by now, so I can feel it in some sessions. So for example, in my leg session today, I just got home earlier. I left out deadlifts because I wanna really top my best next week, and I just need the time to recover.
Sure.
So it was just leg presses and leg extension and stuff like that today. And next week we're gonna finish the program with hopefully a new deadlift PR, and I can't wait for that. So
what's the goal?
How was your week, man?
What's the number?
I'm sorry. 220 kilos for 6.
Fuck.
So yeah, I'm gunning for that. It should work.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
Man.
Cool about what you said with Emma. I think that's a very interesting concept of bodybuilding that not many people take seriously. I think a lot of people leave it to the last minute. I've certainly been accustomed to that. I've left posing to the last minute, and mate, I've sat in so many shows and watched physiques go to shit because they cannot pose. They displayed what looks like an epic physique piss poorly, and it's so frustrating because that physique could have won the show. You know, that physique could have been way ahead of where it was if they'd just taken the time to improve their posing and like you said, expand their knowledge and speak to people that really know their shit. And obviously Emma does. She's got a wacky physique as well for her. Like, her physique is incredible, right?
I mean, she's dieting right now, and she's getting coached by Jordan Peters.
Yes, yeah.
And I think she's doing a IFBB Pro qualifier in June.
Yeah.
And she's doing figure, so I think she will do pretty well with the way she's presenting herself, but also because of her physique. So yeah,
awesome. And yeah, it's also I think what you say about posing in the off season, that's a thing that a lot of people don't essentially want to do because of the cosmetic issues. We don't want to look at ourselves that frequently. It's something that I was thinking about today. You know, I think there's a fine balance between you know, learning the art of posing, which is great, but also actually seeing some element of viable progress in your physique. I think a lot of people potentially, you know, what people don't realize is you can still practice positioning and the fluidity of your posing. So like transitions, quarter turns, etc. You can still practice that without having to look at your physique. You can practice that clothed. You know, a lot of my posing practice, I was clothed during prep. Like I'd just run through quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, and but my main posing practice came from, I set a clip of me at a show, and I had them calling, because I had them the whole show recorded. I had them calling every pose, and I'd just knock out poses to that recording like all the time. So I just set the scene, and when I stepped on stage, it was just like roll call, man. And that's what it should be.
Plus, I think what a lot of people forget is if you can notice a difference in posing during the off season. I mean, the difference when you're dieting and when you're in shape is gonna be massive, man. So if you can take before and after pictures during your off season of your posing and see how you can improve a pose, oh my God, it will look so much better once you're in contest shape, and you will notice huge differences. So the earlier you start, the better. I mean, I'm basically 2.5 years out, and I'm starting to ramp up my posing practice now. And I think what a lot of people do is, and I've done that with clients myself, where I said, okay, we are like 16 weeks out. Let's look at your posing. And that's not enough time, man. So I think I'm gonna incorporate a lot of new stuff with my clients after this experience with Emma, and just see where we go from there. But I think posing is absolutely crucial. And like I said earlier, I'm gonna put it on the level of nutrition and training, because I think it can make that much of a difference.
Yeah. Especially when it's poor. You know, it's that separation of physiques that goes from poor to good posing, and it's the confidence aspect as well. Like, I wouldn't say that I'm a great poser in terms of some of the shots that I hit. I could certainly hit better, but I always got good comments on my posing. In fact, at one of my regionals, the guy that was meant to get the best posing award didn't in the end, because I think he didn't compete in the overall for some reason. He left, which just doesn't make any sense. But
okay.
And then the judges came up to me and after, and they were like, "It's a shame that, you know, that guy left, because it was basically a halfway decision between you and him getting the best posing award." Which is pretty cool, because like I said, I wouldn't deem myself as necessarily a great poser. It's just I had very good confidence, very good poise, and very good endurance. So I wouldn't sort of suffer at the end of a long call out kind of thing. Anyway, my week itself, I know that you asked at the end of one of your one of your replies. So my week itself has been pretty good. I'd say that coming into the week, still relatively fresh off deloading, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I have been sort of hitting again, coming out of a diet, in my opinion. I've been hitting numbers now that I haven't hit in a while, especially on bench press and deadlift and squatting. And it's certainly taken its toll a little bit, namely on, I think I've mentioned it before, my forearms into my bicep. Those tendons just tend to get really sore with me, especially like low bar squatting. And I think that I mentioned in the last update that I begun safety bar squatting, and that's going really well. I hadn't done that this week actually, because I went up to Rip Gym in Harlow, and I trained with Dan Bastick and Dan. Well, I didn't train with Dan Park, but Dan Park was training pull, doing some huge rack pulls, and me and Dan Bastick hit legs together. And Dan's someone that I've followed for about a year and a half, because I first met Dan in Rip Gym because me and Jack were training there, and he came up to me and he said, "Yo, like, you've done a podcast with my coach." And I was like, "Oh, okay, like, who's your coach?" And he was like, "Oh, it's Jordan." And Dan's been coached by Jordan for donkey's years, and always checks in, and Jordan tells him to like man the fuck up and keep eating kind of thing. And it's funny, it's a cool topic for discussion actually, because me and Dan were talking about coaching processes and how things differ, and he was talking about how the way I coach and the video check-ins and the fancy spreadsheets and etc. And he was like, mate, I don't need any of that. I don't want any of that. For him, having JP send him quite a short email each week telling me exactly what to do and how to do it is enough. Like, that's what Dan needs. He doesn't want a fancy spreadsheet. He doesn't want a video check-in. Although I think he'd probably quite like seeing a video of Jordan shouting at him. I think that would be mate, that would motivate the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
But yeah, nevertheless.
Keep eating, you're gonna get destroyed.
yeah. I love that bit of the that podcast he did. But yeah, man, it just shows the diversity in coaching and what some people require. So like, it's totally dependent on the client that we're getting. I think, I coach some quite experienced clientele in terms of the amount of shows they've done, and things like that. And I think I sometimes look at what I do and how I do it, and I sometimes think it's a little bit overwhelming for some of those people, because even at their experience level, they expect that, the coaching process is quite a simplified experience. So having a video check-in and having to log all this data sometimes is a bit like, whoa, I wasn't expecting to do this amount as a result of just being prepped for a show, because they're used to maybe sending their weight off to their coach each week in an email and getting a response saying, this is what we do for the next week, kind of thing. But yeah, nevertheless, a bit of a tangent, but that's a one to think about for sure in terms of the disparity in coaching. That session was wicked. It was, as you can imagine, pretty low volume but very high intensity. I don't think we did anything over 2 sets on an exercise. Dan was really fucking ill because he took a pre-workout for the first time in a long time, and it was some dirt cheap shit that had some horrible ingredient in it. And because the amount that Dan eats and how heavy he is anyway, he won't mind me saying, he's not the fittest of individuals. So when something hits him, it like wipes him out for the rest of the session. So he sort of pummeled his way through, and meant that I was able to catch him up on one movement, but the rest he just absolutely annihilated me on. So that was fun, and it again shows, even just looking at, because I recorded it, even just looking at the video, man, like even just his physique, his body on the hack squat, and then the next clip was me in the hack squat. I just looked like a fucking child next to someone of that weight, and but I tell you what, man, it makes me want to work so much harder. And I know that Dan's, and Dan won't mind me saying, but he's not a natural athlete, so there is a disparity in that realm. But Dan Park, the other guy that we're training with, he makes me look like a child as well, because he's pushed up significantly. He's like 230 pounds, man. And I don't know about you, but when I see people like that, it motivates the hell out of me to work harder. What about you when you see people that are bigger?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's crucial that you work out with people that are strong and bigger than yourself. Yeah. And I really don't care if they are enhanced or not. I really don't care at that moment.
Yeah, me neither.
I just care about being able to hang with them during the session. That's the only thing I care about. I really don't question their status, or if they've been training longer than me, or if they're older, or if they have better lever arms for that exercise, whatever it may be. I just try to beat them. So I think it's really important to get the perspective, and sometimes train with somebody totally different than you're used to, and see what they are doing in that session and how they are moving some big weights, because that is very motivating. Plus, you're also breaking down certain mental barriers that you might have when you see somebody just loading up the bar and doing shit, and you're just standing next to it and think to yourself, man, maybe I can do that too. So
that's so true, man. I mean, we had a Cybex squat press, like the leverage Cybex presses, which I'm usually quite strong at, and I think we had so many 20s on there that I think only one more would have fit on before we'd had to put weight elsewhere or band it. So I think it was either 11 or 12 plates per side, and I got like 10 or 11 reps with that. That was the only thing that I was close to Dan on, was that squat press, because I think the only reason why is because I'm quite strong over a squat movement pattern. So I can get onto that machine and take a squat style stance and just go hell for leather. But on something like a hack, you know, like Dan beasted me on something like a hack. I think we did a banded Cybex hack, and those hacks are hard as fuck anyway without bands, because the more vertical the hack, the harder it is. The one at my gym, it's a Star Trek hack, and it's like, mate, it's like 45 degrees. It's like doing it laid back. It's easy. You can stack weight on there and turn it into like a glute ham move if you put your legs up high enough. So we had our feet like really pretty low, and banded it with some. I think we double banded it, so it's fucking hard. And the resistance would totally drop off the bands at the bottom. So you'd feel like in the bottom you could pause, and then just halfway through the concentric, you'd hit like a giant banded wall, and it'd almost like blow your head off. So that was fun. Do you band any of your movements at the moment, Valentin?
At the moment, not, but I will definitely do with the next cycle, with the next program. Yeah. Because I think I definitely want to include hack squats again, and
have you got a good hack in intelligent strength?
Yes, it's an elite FTS hack. It's huge. It's the Monster Mondo hack.
Oh, has it got the huge platform at the bottom?
Dude, it is ridiculous. I don't know what kind of person needs that kind of platform, but it's
like taking a huge stance.
It's gigantic, man. I mean, it's probably for equipped lifters, so they can use.
I don't know how. Yeah,
but it's huge, man. Yeah. But you can set the angle and everything, so it's pretty adjustable. Sure. But with any hack, I really like to reverse band them, because at the bottom, if you do a hack heavy for several weeks or months, your knees will pay.
Yeah,
so
I've noticed that. Yep.
Yeah, man, reverse banding them is a very smart idea in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a considerable difference between reverse banding and just using regular bands.
Sure.
On paper, it basically looks the same, because it's just accommodating to the resistance, and you are actually manipulating the resistance profile, right? But with reverse bands, you are not taking away inertia, because the weight at the top is the weight at the top. And you're not fighting the band tension, it helps you, and then you're basically just fighting the weight. I prefer reverse bands.
Interesting.
And I think for hypertrophy that makes a whole lot of sense, and even for powerlifting, reverse bands make a lot of sense, because you still have inertia. But like I said, with any hack squat, I like to use bands, because after a while my knees just feel horrible, man. Yeah. Especially if you're going heavy. So I mean, I saw the videos you guys did for that session, and it looked like a brutal session, man. Especially the squat press.
And I think one of the hardest moves out of the bunch, apart from the hack, was probably the hammer strength leg press, which is the one where the
seated one.
Yeah, seated, which Nunes uses a lot. It's like almost like a 45 degree curve to the lever arm, and then you load it up at the front. And for fuck's sake, like Dan was like, "I will ban this as well," and banded it. And oh my god, you like, even to get the first rep up. Like, I looked at Dan after I did the first rep, and I was like, fuck, am I getting 8 with this? And he was like, no, trust me. Like, the first rep's the hardest to get going. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I ended up like getting 8, but I think it makes your head want to explode. You have to really focus on your breathing on those kind of things, because otherwise you'll end up with some sort of exertion headache, because you're bracing so much against the load. Yeah. It's horrible. Yeah.
I mean, breathing with leg pressing. I noticed it again today because we did leg presses, and even with something like in the 10 to 12 rep range, your breathing is so important, man. Because if you're getting sloppy with your breathing, your head is just gonna explode, and the last few reps are gonna get sloppy, and it's just gonna be a shit set. Yeah. So but with the bands, especially with starting from a dead stop position, it becomes evident how important the stretch reflex is, because the first rep, it feels like I'm in no way I'm going to get 8 reps with this. Yep. And then you get first rep, and the second rep actually feels quite a bit easier. Yep. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. I mean, I absolutely love banding stuff for lower body movements. Yeah. And I can't wait to do that with my new program. So yeah.
I tell you what, I tried yesterday out of a mountain dog video that I was watching. Because sometimes when I haven't got anything particular to watch, if I know you're the same. If Jansen hasn't uploaded or JP hasn't uploaded, I'll usually scroll through old Mountain Dog videos, but like not necessarily the new ones, because I do watch them, but not as much. Just the old ones where it's like a 60-second clip of just one exercise. And I found him doing banded pullovers with a dumbbell. So you'd wrap the band at the bottom of the dumbbell and attach it to like a pin stack backwards. Man, holy fuck. That is a way better resistance profile than just doing it with a standard dumbbell. Like the strength curve is it's just brutal. It's so much harder to fight through a band when you're in that stretch position, like pausing here and then trying to break through the resistance. That fucked my lats up a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the few occasions, in my opinion, where bands for a lat or trap exercise makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and that's a lovely variation from John, because he's using bands on everything, and I absolutely love how versatile he uses them.
Yeah,
and especially for something like pullovers, that makes a lot of sense if you're not doing cables or machines for pullovers. Definitely,
you have a great machine by the looks of it. What machine is that? Because it looks like it's custom made, the pullover machine.
Yeah, it's a very old Nautilus machine. So it's one of the first ones. It's huge, man. So it's massive, and it got a huge weight stack on there. But I mean, just with most machines, with pullover machines, the resistance profile is not 100% perfect, because at the bottom position where you're weakest, you're never ever getting into that position. So doing like a mechanical drop set on these machines makes a lot of sense. So you just spend like a few reps in the shortened position, and then once you can't get the muscle fully shortened, you just go into the stretch and wrap it out there. So that works. That's a good workaround if you don't have a machine where you can adjust the resistance profile. Like, I don't know if you've ever used one of the Prime pieces. I haven't,
no, and they look so good because you can put plates all over the place, can't you, to change the profile?
Yeah. I mean, I've never used the selectorized ones. I've only used the plate-loaded ones. Yeah. And they used to be Strive, so that used to be the old company that got bought by Prime. Okay. And it was like 4 years ago, because I talked to the sales manager in Cologne, in Germany.
Because you're really into kit, aren't you? You've got me more into looking at kit.
dude, it's fascinating, because there's so much good stuff out there, and when everybody talks about kit, everybody just mentions hammer strength or something like that, and there's so many more manufacturers out there that are just killing hammer strength. Prime comes to mind, where you can really adjust the resistance profile by having 3 different pins, and depending on where you put more of the weight, the resistance changes throughout the range of motion.
Yeah.
That stuff will always be fascinating to me, because it makes so much more sense, and you immediately know if it's well built if you have a good amount of training experience.
Sure.
Because some people just lay on a machine and they have no freaking idea what they're doing. But if you have a certain kind of training experience, you know how to train to failure. You know how we train. So when you use a kit like that, you immediately know what's on, what's good, what's off, and that's a lot of fun, man, trying out different stuff. So I can't wait when you come over.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, I'm buzzing for that. I think you'll have to control me, man, because I'll be a kid in a candy shop and I'll end up doing stupid lengths of sessions trying to try everything.
Dude, that's good. That's fine. There's plenty of food around.
Cool. So I think we should crack on to the question at hand, which you got. So how was it worded, the question, and do you remember who it was from, if we can mention them at all, if you've got their name? If not, don't worry, but it would be nice to shout out the people.
The question basically was from Jim Marcus. That's basically merged the name of Jim and Marcus, and he wanted to know what we think about push-pull leg splits over upper-lower splits.
Sure.
So you want to go first, and I'll just add my thoughts later on?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I've noticed anecdotally with trying to implement upper-lower splits with clients, especially those that are coming from single body part backgrounds, that their adherence to upper-lower splits is certainly something that they struggle with. I think the reasoning behind this is because when they go into sessions with a background in single body part training, they expect to come out of a session feeling like they have fucked a body part up. So they will come out thinking, I've just trained chest, my chest is sore, I'll wake up the next morning and I will know I've trained chest because I can't put on my t-shirt kind of thing. And when that level of soreness goes, they think that something is going wrong and that they're not training how they used to and thus making less progress. But when you look at how effectively they're gathering volume over a week, you know that from a coaching perspective, they're actually doing things better because they're accumulating less localized fatigue. They're gathering more, they're accumulating more volume, more work as a result of spreading it across multiple sessions as opposed to annihilating it in one. So that's the first thing, is they don't really like it because they'll come out and they'll say, I could have done more for this. I could have done more arms. I could have done more chest. I don't really feel like I'm working a body part. And that's actually the first thing that I ever said to a coach that gave me an upper lower split back in 2014 when I first did my first ever prep. Came from it would literally be a pure bro split, like chest on a Monday, legs on a Tuesday, and then arms, back, and it would be very single body part focused. So that's an issue that I do sort of come across, but as soon as I start to explain why we're doing what we're doing and the rationale, they start to get it and sometimes enjoy it. But personally, I can really relate to people that end up not enjoying it because I don't really like the upper lower split because I don't feel like, for me, I don't feel like I can focus my entire attention and have the neurological ability to handle an entire upper body session at the intensities that I want to train at. So like today, if I had to do what I wanted to do to like hit all my upper body moves, if I had to do a bench press, a seated dumbbell shoulder press, and then go into a heavy row, I think I'd just be a neurological mess. So the way in which you have to look at programming an upper lower split is very cautious if you know that someone's going to be training really hard. So in that scenario, I'd make sure that we either had one day where everything was quite CNS taxing and then the other upper day was more so volume based upper day, or you had a combo. So you had in one session some quite CNS or neurologically taxing moves, big compounds, low rep ranges, potentially to failure or to concentric failure, and then some movements that were higher rep range, less compoundy, you know, like maybe instead of doing a barbell row, you do a chest supported move and into a higher rep range kind of thing. So that's what I've noticed both anecdotally and with clients is that the adherence issues, and then just the enjoyment factor, and then the psychological side of things in terms of the focus going into sessions. What's your opinions, dude?
Yeah, man. Agree with pretty much everything you said there. But what I really think that what's a really great tool if you want to introduce somebody to an upper lower split when they come from a body part split is that you could basically mix a push pull leg split and an upper lower split
like
within
a hybrid. Yeah.
You basically have a hybrid and slowly have them adjust to that type of frequency and type of split.
Yeah.
And because they still have more volume on those push pull leg days for that particular muscle groups, and on the upper lower day you just split up whatever is able to be done in that session. But like yourself, I always really struggled with bringing the intensity towards the end of an upper session. With lower, you're basically used to train hams and quads together, right? If you have a leg day or whatever. But with upper, you're doing chest, you're doing shoulders, you're doing triceps, you're doing maybe even biceps. You're doing two different movements for your back, and all of a sudden you're like 3 hours in the gym and you not training 3 hours for one body part, you're training different body parts, your entire upper body, and you're just completely exhausted by the time you get to your heavy row.
Agreed.
Or, I mean, that's a huge issue. So, I mean, you can definitely prioritize certain body parts by using proper exercise sequencing, but it's definitely an issue once somebody is more advanced or even at a certain intermediate level, because you will just be able to train so intensely at the beginning of the session that later on in that session you have nothing left.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think what people should have to realize is that thinking in terms of upper lower and push pull legs is probably not the best, because I like to think in the way of 2 ways, 3 ways, 4-way splits. And in that way, I don't have to be within that strict guideline of upper lower or anything like that, because I can just use different body parts and mix them, right?
Yep.
For example, if you have like the 2-way dog crab split, right? They used to put biceps before hams and quads.
Interesting.
So
nice. Yeah.
While it's a very small muscle, obviously, you're still training something of your upper body on leg day. And for me, that was always a nice balancing out.
I struggled with that because I've tried that. I really did. Yeah, because you know what? It's because my arms fucking suck. So when I walked into the gym and I was training biceps, I don't feel like a boss when I train biceps. I feel like, neurologically, I feel like I'm a boss when I'm going in to squat, and I know that I'm putting big numbers on my back and people are watching and I can video it and all this shit. Like, I feel ecstatic. I feel awesome. Go and ask me to do like an incline hammer curl before I do that, and I've just wiped out my cockiness.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I mean, there's not too many crazy biceps movements that match deadlift or a squat, right? No. I mean, that's not going to happen. For me personally, it was just the element of having something worked off my upper body within that lower session that was really appealing to me. But then again, you're definitely right. I mean, biceps or arms in general is not the most exciting thing to train if you like heavy squats and heavy deadlifts. But yeah, I mean, as far as the versus argument goes, push-pull legs versus upper-lower, I don't think you have to put them against each other. They're both tools in your toolbox, and you can use both. And like we just mentioned, you can use a hybrid and use push-pull legs and upper-lower within a single training week, and use it to basically adjust your volume and your frequency. But I really don't have a preference as far as that goes, because I know advanced people that thrive on upper-lower splits. And if we're looking, if we're taking somebody who's very advanced, like for example David Henry, who's doing 42 training by Dr. Scott Stevenson, he is training multiple body parts, sometimes his whole body within a single session, and it's working pretty well. So you cannot really say upper-lower is just for beginners or intermediates. It really has to fit what's going on up here with that person, and if they can buy into that approach. So I'm definitely with you on the upper days that you cannot maintain intensity across that upper session. But I know plenty of people that are able to, and if volume is low enough, it's certainly possible. But I personally like to have something at least along the ways of a 3-way split.
Yeah, agreed. I think something that I've always interestingly thought about when it comes to upper lower splits is maybe a greater favorability is to programming it for females over males. There are a few thoughts behind this, mainly based on recovery capabilities and the fact that I know everything's relative, but even when you look at sort of the recovery curve on like the CNS and things like that, if you're looking at the loads that generally most females are using, I know things are relative, but still the taxing element of some of those sessions and some of those moves are obviously less so. And we obviously know that in some elements, females can tend to recover a little bit better due to decreased loading, and they tend to respond well to pretty high volumes and still recover really, really well due to a sort of a different setup in terms of their type muscle fibers. But I also find from an adherence and enjoyment aspect, most females tend to enjoy upper lower splits more. I don't know whether that's because they come from a background of quite high volume training, so they'll come from sort of like, when they initially would get into the gym, they'd just do a bit of everything. That's what females tend to do when they start training. They just do a bit of everything. Whereas guys, you'll go in and you'll train like a bro, usually to start with. So the initial exception into the gym environment for a female is sometimes different, unless they start going with their boyfriend. And in that case, they come to me as a client saying my split is the same as my boyfriend's in terms of training arms as a bikini competitor kind of thing. But I think the way that I like setting up upper lower splits for females as well, because it means you can usually lay a bit more focus. Like you can have maybe 1 or 2 upper body sessions per week and lay a little bit more focus onto really hitting the lower body with high frequencies, and they seem to respond pretty well to that. I have some females on 3, if not 4 lower body sessions per week, and then their upper body session will be pretty long, pretty lengthy, and of course they will be training their chest, because training your chest is important as a female. I think a lot of females don't realize that. I've had some females come to me and say, I don't like pressing and I don't like training chest. And well, you don't like you being in a good posture then for everything else, because your postural ability is largely dictated by you pressing in a variety of planes. So I just generally like the way that it looks when I look at a program like an upper lower split for a female. But have you experienced that at all with females? Maybe enjoying upper lower splits more than male clients?
Yeah, man, I would definitely tend to agree that females do better with a high frequency, because their work capacity is just through the roof in most cases.
Yeah.
And at a certain level, when they get towards the genetic potential, towards the genetic ceiling, they might be so strong that a free weight split may be warranted. But in many cases, you can really ramp up the frequency with female competitors, because they are just able to recover from literally everything, even in a deficit. I've noticed that many times that I was able to increase training volume towards a show, and I was just thinking to myself, how is this possible? How are you recovering on this on such a low intake and with 1 hour cardio a day and stuff like that? And it's just obviously not a problem. Okay, so that always blows my mind. But with upper lower splits, I think you can also, if you have a high frequency with both, you can sell the upper day better for a female if there's plenty of lower days within a week, because females always like to train the glutes, the hams, the quads, but nobody likes to train the delts, the chest, the back. So you can increase buy-in by appropriately placing those upper days within a training week, and that can help hugely with adherence with a female client. So I mean, yeah, I would tend to agree that upper lower days are probably optimal for most female competitors. And once they get very strong, very advanced, and are moving loads that require longer recovery periods, then you can move on to a free weight split, basically.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the final thing to cap off potential programming considerations is, like you would program sometimes biceps or arms on a lower body day for a male, potentially even a female, if they're really looking to bring up an area. But I will sometimes, if the upper day is like a once per week frequency, I'll sometimes add like lateral raises or some kind of lateral movement onto a lower body day for a female, or even something like a rest pause or a cluster set on like a lat pull down. And just have them just to get a little bit more back frequency. Because obviously with most competitors, bikini or figure, you're looking to build a lot of the width from the perspective of building the lats and also building the medial delts, which tends to be a lot of what competitors lack. So, and they tend to like doing that as well. So yeah, and that's the final consideration. Unless you have anything else to add on upper lower splits, Valentin?
Not really, except that you can do lateral raises on pretty much any day of the week, and it's not going to be a problem or a recovery issue. So do your lateral raises. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we've got a little bit of time to cover a second question. If you're good for time, are you, Valentin?
Let's do it, man.
Okay, cool. So I got the question of Peri Workout Nutrition. So I'll bring it up again so I can quote the name and give it a little bit more context. We don't have a clue what Valentin eats because he's made the correct decision and not posted any of his meals online, so he doesn't get fielded with 80 questions as to how to cook rice. Okay, so it's from a guy called Lil_Cav. Lil Cav.
Okay.
We're now going to make him Big Cav.
Let's do it, man.
Alright, so he says, timing of carbs. Not sure if you've already covered the topic. I notice you have carbs pretty much at all your meals on training days. whereas others seem to have them just around their workout. Does it come down to personal preference? I know it's good to have most of your carbohydrates peri-workout, but stuffing down huge amounts of carbs peri-workout gets hard. So you can take this one first.
Yeah, man. I mean, he basically has somewhat answered his own question, because stuffing your face around a workout. I mean, is your workout quality really increased by having a full stomach and trying to do an intense workout with a full stomach? I don't think that's gonna be the best way to go. So I personally like to split my carbs across all my meals, and I definitely at a certain training level, you have to look at the length of the session and what intensity you're bringing to the session, and then you can decide if you want to introduce carbs intra-workout, pre-workout, post-workout, and in what amounts. But for example, with myself, just to give some context with all of this, my sessions currently last very long. So my sessions are around 3 hours right now, and I definitely want carbs and some aminos within my training session. If your training session is lasting like 70 to 80 minutes, you don't necessarily need anything intra-workout. Like if you eat 1 or 2 hours before your training session, then you train, you just drink water basically, and after your training session you go home and eat. That's basically as good as it gets for your peri-workout nutrition. That's pretty solid. And make sure you have carbs in that pre and post-workout meal. But if you want to optimize things and if your training sessions get lengthier, then I would definitely introduce some carbs intra-workout. Make sure it's a source you can stomach easily, because people...
What does your shake look like at the moment intra-workout?
It's basically just EAAs and maltodextrin. Very simple, very basic. And it's around, depending on the session and the muscle group I'm training, it's around 50 to 100 grams of carbs and about 10 to 15 grams of EAAs. That's it.
Okay, cool. Have you experimented with anything else at all intra-workout, like whey protein isolate or highly branched dextrin, electrolytes?
Dude, I've tried everything from BCAAs to Pepto Pro to Vitago to Waxy Maze back in the days. I've tried everything, and I have to say, at a certain time, and cluster dextrin and all that stuff, you just have to find a carb source that you can stomach easily. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't use dextrose or anything like that, because you're just gonna explode. But or nowadays, everybody is against BCAAs. I mean, everybody used to use them like 2 years ago. But
I think EAAs are just more optimal, aren't they, from a muscle protein synthesis standpoint?
100%, man. Absolutely. You get all 9 essential aminos, and it's just you just get more bang for your buck. Yeah. But I would just choose a carb source that you can stomach easily, whatever that may be. The cluster dextrin is great, but it's not gonna give you that much of an improvement. And the same goes for your aminos. If you just go with a high quality EAA product, that's probably pretty good. You can go with something like a hydrolyzed whey isolate. I've used all that stuff, but with a very sensitive stomach, I have to say that I ran into problems with whey isolates, even hydrolyzed whey intra-workout. So I just like to stick to something that is very easily digested. And for me, that's maltodextrin and the EAAs. So you can always go the more expensive route, but I think those two cover most people's needs. So yeah, I would stick to those. Yeah.
Cool. So to add a little bit more to the discussion there, I first and foremost very much agree with the way that you'd set things up in terms of looking at the workout time, the length, and also sort of, I think, the positioning of where the athlete is or the individual, as to whether they're in a diet phase or an off-season phase. I think that the importance, and Scott Stevenson has mentioned this a lot, the importance of the intra-workout nutrition, I think, should be kept as a good focus throughout the entire prep, because a lot of people will just look at the intra-workout nutrition and think it's liquid calories and remove it, whereas your window for recovery and your window for nutrient uptake is going to be in that time period. So if you want to situate nutrition for maximizing recovery, you want to situate some intra-workout. So whether it's as minimal as I kept, I think throughout my entire prep, 25 grams of highly branched cyclic dextrin, and sometimes it was Pepto Pro or EAAs. And I certainly went through, before I was educated enough to realize the differences, I certainly went through my phases of just using the old 5 grams of BCAAs, thinking that was going to be sort of enough. And whilst it might have some acute benefits, they're certainly not not as elevated as EAAs. And yeah, taste and flavor. You know, I think that certainly it's optimal to look at that. Now, in terms of, so to add to the conversation, pre and post workout meals, the way that I like to look at this again is whether you pre-contest, whether you're in off season. This phase is very important for maximizing recovery and maximizing performance. So you see a lot of people in pre-contest phases, whilst it's great for adherence, saving and backloading your calories is never a great idea if your training window is outside of that area in which you're backloading. So if you're lucky like me and Valentin, we have an element of choice as to when we train. Therefore, we can sort of schedule our food to match adherence and performance, which is great, you know, in my opinion. So I would make sure that I was training a little later in the day so that towards the end of the day where I was a little bit more hungry, I'd have more food, and it just made more sense. But in an off-season period of time where you're in a prolonged overfed state, the importance is still there, because I think a lot of the time people think, oh, I'm just overfed, so I'm going to be fine regardless of what I do. The reality is, you know, if you're lumping in random macros each time you go into a session, so your pre-workout meal is constantly changing, you're going to have a constantly different variable there. You could one day have an incredibly high-fat meal and feel very drained, sluggish, and run down and ruin your session. You could have another day where you have an extremely high-carb meal with minimal fat and have a huge blood sugar drop off and feel like absolute shit throughout your session. You probably won't go hypo because you're in an overfed state, but you could, if your session is really long, you could, it depends, it totally depends on the context of your overall day of eating. You could have a really significant blood sugar drop and end up feeling really shitty. I like to keep my pre-workout meal fairly moderate in size, but I also always like to combine that meal with a little bit of dietary fat, usually in the form of dark chocolate. Dark chocolate has some multitude of benefits in terms of potentially some cognitive enhancing tools. If you look into it a little bit, I mean, whether or not they're enough, don't know. Probably a bit of a placebo. It tastes fucking nice. I find if you go for and I'm not talking about like 70%, I'm talking about 85 at least, maybe 90. The bitterness tends to give me like an element of focus anyway, because when I eat it, I'm like I'm a bit more awake now. I'm a bit more focused. I can feel that drive. I like to keep carbs around about 80 to 90. I wouldn't really see my carbs go over 100 in that pre-workout meal, because with that, I feel like that volume of food, especially from relatively clean sources, just tends to sit on me for a little bit too long. I like to keep fiber low around the workout window as well, just again to aid digestion, potentially aiding the uptake of food as well. And then in my post-workout intro, I completely agree with what Valentin says. Post-workout meal, I tend to go considerably higher carb, not really worrying about the fact that I'm going to have a blood sugar spike, because if anything, you want to release insulin in that window, because insulin will blunt cortisol or help bring down the cortisol response to training. We want to get into a recovery mode as soon as we stop training. So we want to bring down cortisol, bring down all the sympathetic hormones that we've released throughout our training session, and getting into a state of recovery. And having an insulin spike will help that in a sense. And insulin in itself is fucking anabolic, you know. It's why bodybuilders potentially use it.
The most anabolic thing there is.
Exactly. So if you can keep your post-workout meal relatively high in carbs, pretty minimal in fat, but like Valentin said, there's no, especially if you're having intra-workout nutrition, I wouldn't say there's a ginormous rush to eat that meal. So you certainly don't have to bring like a 1.5 kilo Tupperware of cereal with you to your session. You can certainly go home, and I personally have made strides with my cooking ability in terms of preparation. So even though I was already running a bit late for my post-workout meal and my podcast with Valentin today, I had it all prepared in the rice cooker. So it all just sits there. It's all cooked. Every ingredient is cooked, and it's all warm. So it's nice. I'm not putting it in a cold container trying to rush it down me. And I think having done a lot more looking into how we absorb nutrients, gut health, and just general well-being in my off-season recently, I've realized the importance of digestion and uptake of food. So if you're eating meals, especially in that post-workout window where absorption is of a high importance, if you're rushing that meal down you, in fact, me and Valentin were talking to each other before because we were both eating, and Valentin was like, don't rush, and that's perfect, because if you rush your food, you're not going to absorb it as well. You're going to place digestive tract issues, you're going to have bloating, etc., and you don't want any of that. So I find that having that window of time where I leave the gym, almost cool down on my drive home, get in, potentially have a shower, freshen up a little bit. I've probably had about half an hour, 40 minutes since leaving my last set, so it's not long, but it's enough just to chill out. And I find that by then already my hunger symptoms are starting to come in, and I'm in a position where I can eat. And then, like I said, it will be high carb, minimal fat, and at least 30 grams of protein from a fairly lean source. And other than that, I think, what's your opinion, Valentin, to let you chime in, because I know that I've blasted on a bit about this. What's your opinion on managing insulin sensitivity, and therefore, because I think a lot of people will keep carbohydrates away from other meals that don't surround the workout to potentially maximize the insulin response and thus insulin sensitivity by having sort of the no carb protein and fat, or protein and veggies meals. What's your opinion on that?
I think that usually depends on two factors. That's just genetics, one thing, and the second would be your body fat percentage. So no matter where you place your carbs, and if you're choosing protein fat meals prior to your training sessions to basically backload your carbs to have a greater insulin response, I think you don't really have to pay too much attention to that, because if your body fat levels are where they should be when you're in your improvement season, when you're building muscle, then that's going to be the biggest factor in that whole insulin sensitivity issue category, basically, topic. So, and obviously genetics always play a role into that. If you're in a family where people have had insulin issues and where insulin sensitivity has not been that great, well, you probably can't do that much to positively affect that by placing carbs, 5 grams of carbs here and 5 grams of carbs there. So you just have to accept the fact that you're not in the elite department here. So I think genetics and your body fat percentage are the biggest two determining factors here. And actually, one other thing I wanted to add to what you mentioned earlier was food volume. And I think that's hugely important for your pre-workout meal, because I see there's so many times people having like a huge salad before your training, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, no way. And so have like, definitely as far as fiber goes, keep fiber down, keep fat down. But I'm a lot more loose when it comes to fiber and fat post-workout, because like
interesting.
Because like you said, it's very important to anticipate the meal and to enjoy the meal and take your time with the meal. But since I'm assuming that person is training once a day, you have 24 hours or a little bit less
to replenish.
Exactly, until your next session. That little bit of fiber and fat in your post-workout meal won't slow down digestion that much that your recovery is impaired. So when clients come to me regarding nutrition, I tell them, if you're training once a day, your post-workout meal can have fiber in there, you can have fat in there, it doesn't really matter. But if you're training twice a day, and after the first session, your post-workout meal definitely has to look a certain way. We want to keep fiber down, we want to keep fat low, because you only have like 4 to 6 hours until your next session if you're doing 2 a days, and you definitely want to have everything available for the body and have everything digest very easily. So depending on the session frequency per day, I would definitely be more careful with fiber and fat. But other than that, I'm keeping that pretty loosely. So yeah.
Have you found any specific food options like fit well with you? Have you found that potentially looking towards like white rice based products as opposed to lots of potatoes or anything like that? And do you tend to stick to the sort of the same foods pre and post workout?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I try to keep variety in there, obviously, but you just find out foods that just work for you and they work over and over again. And white rice is probably one of those carb sources that works for pretty much everybody.
The magical vertical diet.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Make sure you get your salt in. So I mean, I haven't yet met a person that doesn't digest white rice well. Maybe I need to work with more people, but white rice is really a carb source that works well pre-workout, it works well post-workout, and it really depends on how you get in other nutrients with your proteins, veggies, and fats, because rice itself is not that nutrient dense, but it's definitely a great carb source, and most people digest it well. So, I mean, I definitely like potatoes in a dieting phase because they are so satiating.
Yeah.
I mean, they are the satiety king, but they can get problematic because of the higher fiber amounts. So pre-workout, I would definitely be careful with potatoes, but post-workout, not really an issue. Yeah. So those are definitely two big carb sources I use on a regular basis. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you probably have the classic bodybuilding foods in that category, right? You have oats, potatoes, white rice. So pretty much everybody uses those or variations of those. And I think you just have to experiment a bit with your carb sources and see what fits best for you and what you digest well. Yeah. Actually, one thing I tried with Cliff, I think it was in December, January, where I told Cliff, hey, I want to try mixing different carb sources and different protein sources within a single meal and see how it affects digestion. Okay. And I tried meals where I used 2 carb sources and 1 protein source. I tried meals where I used 2 protein sources and 1 carb source. And I used 2 protein sources and 2 carb sources. And time again, I did that for about a month. I found that the meals with 2 carb sources and 2 protein sources digested the best.
Interesting.
With a huge difference. Yeah. And the thing why it's probably harder to maintain that type of food setup is because you just have to prepare foods.
Cooking.
You have to prepare more foods, man. You just have to invest more time cooking. Yeah, and I can get pretty lazy when it comes to that. Yeah. So it's just like yourself. It's just easy to throw on the rice cooker and throw in some white rice and have a piece of meat next to it. So preparing 2 carb sources and 2 protein sources, all of a sudden you have to turn chef, and that is not always the most convenient way to prepare something. Yeah, but yeah, sure. If anybody wants to try that is certainly something that it can improve digestion very well. And yeah, it's just a time question, I guess. Sure.
And I think, one more thing on food volume, a product that I've found is very, very good in terms of managing food volume and getting in adequate calories is cream of rice, because you can control the volume. So you can mix it with an adequate amount of water. Yeah. You can have, legit, I've sometimes, when my appetite's been a bit lower just because I've been busy or a little bit stressed out or whatever, I've made, a bowl of cream of rice that's, worthy of 150 grams of carbs, and it's, that thick. It's, that thick. I can literally stick a teaspoon in it and start making my way through, and within, 10 minutes it's gone kind of thing.
I mean, you're the king of the huge oatmeals, right? You did those in prep every day, basically. I mean, they were massive, man.
I mean, do you want to know the bowl that I used, man? It's over here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is what I used throughout my entire prep, and this would be full. This would be full of oats, something that big. That's my head.
Yeah, man, that's volume, baby.
Now what I use, and people still message me saying my oats look huge. That's the comparison.
Yeah.
Off season on prep.
yeah, that's how we do it, man.
But yeah, volume is certainly something you want to manage, and I think that people actually Revive Stronger. Steve and Pascal had a good conversation about this the other week. I was listening to their sort of duo podcast, and they were talking about how people hold on to food volume when they're coming out of a deficit, because they're searching the satiated feeling, not realizing that that's not going to happen for quite some time. I didn't feel legitimately full for quite some time, but I just accepted that shit. I was just like, cool, I'm not going to feel full even if I eat 4,500, 5,000 calories right here. You know, I'm not going to feel, I can fill my stomach up with veg and just be bloated, but I'm not ever going to feel fully satiated. I think now, over the last sort of month, I felt like, yeah, cool, I don't really want to eat anymore, but if I have to, I will, kind of thing.
Yeah, you're definitely a step ahead of me in that regard, because I had a very hard time accepting the fact that I would be hungry for a very long time, even after prep has ended.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to stuff my face with veggies, and it just didn't work, man. It just didn't work. So I think Cliff has talked about this as well, that during your prep, you just have to accept hunger, man. Hunger is not your biggest enemy. People always, I mean, probably for a Gen Pop, if they diet, hunger is the biggest enemy. But for us, it's not really, because your fatigue levels are so crazy. Fatigue is your enemy. So that little bit of hunger, you just get used to it. And trying to beat that hunger down with more and more veggies is just not gonna work, man. Just accept it and suck it up.
Yeah, and you'll end up looking at yourself in the mirror really upset because you're bloated all the time from incredibly high amounts of fiber, and it's just
horrible,
not,
man.
like you said, it's just not worth it. It's best to just look peeled, feel tired, and just eat relatively normal foods with some element of higher volumes here and there. But you know, certainly don't want to be having a 250 gram bag of salad with every meal. Fuck that. You know, I've been there and done that, man. I've been there and done that with the food volumes. I remember in one of my preps, I made this protein fluff shit with a load of xanthan gum, and man, I was legit. I swear to God, I could have gone to A&E with the amount of stomach cramps I had off that.
Yeah.
Painful.
That stuff is the devil. I mean, I think everybody has tried it and tried to make some protein fluff with ice cubes in their mixer.
Yeah.
But dude, that can go wrong. So don't buy it. Just don't buy it. Straight away, don't buy it, man. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think we'll leave it there for this week. I think we covered those two questions pretty well. Obviously, if you guys have any sort of backlog of questions as a result of this, then just comment below in the YouTube section or DM us on Instagram. If you have anything you want us to cover in the next one, let us know. But as usual, sort of a day before or on the day of, we usually ask people, and we'll pick a few questions that we think are good. But yeah, anything else to leave, mate?
No, that's it. I think great questions. Send your questions again, and can't wait for next week's episode, man. Let's do it.
Great stuff. Awesome stuff, guys. Well, we'll chat in the next one, and thanks again for listening. See you in a bit.